A friend of mine lived in Toronto back when this happened, and during this encounter, he was staying with some family down in San Diego for about a month. He'd never seen the American desert, and desperately wanted to while he was here. So I drove down from LA to fetch him, and we took the 8 East out of California, and then we jumped on the US 99 North, just across the border to Arizona near Yuma. He was blown away by the sights, needless to say. He couldn't believe the view looking west. The desert comes right up to the edge of the road, so you feel like you're surrounded by it. The US 99 North itself is a cracked and patched up stretch of highway, but when you look west, it's like man was never even there. It reminded us of the old Wild West movies like in Young Guns. And then about 30 minutes outside of a place called Courtside, the sun disappeared completely, and we were in the dark, besides our headlights. We continued out on an empty road going north. I asked him if he wanted to stop by Lake Havasu, and that's when we saw something fall into the road in front of us. I slowed to a stop, and, dumbfounded, asked if those were fish lying right in front of us on the highway in the middle of the desert. And sure enough, they were fish. Fish that fell from the sky. We both got out of the car to see the fish, and to our surprise, one of them was still alive. There was one really big fish that was gasping on the pavement. Where the hell did this thing come from? All of these things just dropped right out of the sky. And obviously, there was no lake around here because we were in the middle of nowhere. Chris looked up at the dark, starry night, looking for any signs of what could have dropped the fish, and decided it was probably a bird or something nearby. Maybe there was some nearby pond somewhere, and this bird scored it from there, and then just dropped its dinner. I didn't really know what I was talking about, but when I was saying it, it seemed like a logical explanation. The two other fish that had been dropped on the road were more just heads and entrails. How they were still moving, I don't really understand. The poor big fish was still intact and alive, and I thought I could save him by tossing him in some water if I could find some. I looked around for a drainage pipe, or a puddle or something. Maybe there was a water hole around where this fish came from. But Chris looked out at the fish in the headlights, and then he told me that it was dead. I looked over at it. It wasn't gasping anymore. The poor thing really was dead. He made some sarcastic remark about mouth-to-mouth and fish CPR. We got back in the car and continued to drive. When we did, Chris started talking about the fish. It's funny, though, that this big fish was still alive. You'd think that if it dropped from way up there, it would have been smashed too. But I told him, I figured it was dropped just above the headlights. That's the only possible explanation. We both still thought it was weird, though. Chris thought that maybe there was a truck ahead of us and it bounced off and up into the air and then right in front of us, but that didn't really sound like a logical explanation to me. I told him it was the desert, and a lot of weird stuff does happen out here. I turned on the radio and started punching buttons, trying to listen to AM weather reports instead of Chris, who started to sing Hotel California, since we really were on a dark desert highway. But Chris started singing again, unfazed. And then all of a sudden, boom! Something smashed on the road in front of us, right in front of the car again. I slammed on the brakes and the car slid, and we came just inches short of smashing into this thing that was in the middle of the road. We sat there for a moment, catching our breath. We could see that it was a large carcass of some kind of animal. I realized that this thing in front of us was the body of a cow, and it was just dropped out of the sky on the highway, just like the fish. We were no longer laughing. Shit just got real. Neither of us wanted to get out of the car at that point. I tried to pull around this thing, which was plopped right in the middle of the road. We both just sat there, marveling that a cow literally just fell right out of the sky. Neither one of us had any clue as to how that happened. It wasn't a bird that dropped this thing, Chris said, and his voice sounded really alarmed. I didn't blame him. Like I said, weird stuff happens in the desert all the time, but I'd never heard of a cow falling from the sky in the middle of the road. To top it off, I didn't know if I could even pull around this thing because I was scared we'd get stuck in the sand. I asked Chris if we should get out and move it out of the way, but Chris just wanted to turn back and find a different route because this just felt so wrong. I told him that was a good idea, and I began to back up. But suddenly, this freak sandstorm started coming out of nowhere. It was thick and heavy, and the car actually started rocking back and forth. The wind was actually so brutal that you could hear the sand hitting the sides of the car. Chris, at this point, was freaking out because he didn't understand what was going on. He was in a blind panic. I told him that it was okay, trying to calm him down, that it was just a sandstorm and that it would pass. I told him we should just ride it out, and sandstorms happen out in the desert. He wanted to know how long it could last, and I told him it probably wouldn't be very long. Usually they thin out within minutes. And then, sure enough, after a few more minutes the sand thinned out and the wind died down. And that was when our headlights cut through the haze of dust on the empty road in front of us. And that freaking cow was gone. Chris looked around in hysterics, asking where it went. He just kept asking me, "Where is it? Where is it?" We looked around the road, the shoulder, the surrounding desert. Nothing. This thing was completely gone. The wind didn't blow it away. We thought that maybe somebody was out there screwing with us, so we did all we could do. I just started driving again. There was no need to back up and turn around because the cow was out of our way, so we just kept on going in the same direction that we had been. But at this point, Chris was really starting to lose it and kept asking me what the hell was going on. He asked if this was normal desert stuff, and I kept telling him no, this is weird, and I didn't know what was going on. I've never experienced anything like that before. We drove for about another 10 minutes or so, and we were both pretty scared at this point. We were looking around for a turnoff, but we couldn't find any, so we decided to stop at a service station in the next town and decide what to do from there. I told him to get the map, and when he was looking at it, BAM! Something smashed into the top of the car. It dented the roof, and it sounded like it rolled off. I saw a shadow flash by the window and drop on the road behind us. Chris was screaming and swearing at this point, and I kept the car moving forward because I was too scared to stop. I had no idea what was going on, and I didn't really want to know. Another thud, and then this big mass dropped in front of us in the middle of the road again. I slammed on the brakes again, trying to avoid hitting this thing for the second time, and we both just stared. Because right there in front of us looked like the same damn cow that was dropped on the road before. Chris screamed. I put the car in reverse and started backing up. But then Chris shouted, "Look, look, look!" He pointed out the windshield at the front of the road as the lights illuminated the cow. But there was something else behind it. The first thing I saw is what looked like giant bat wings, and they were flapping down next to the cow. Chris wondered if it was a bat, but I told him that a bat could not be that big. This thing that we were looking at was huge. We watched this thing for a moment, and the wings descended over the carcass and appeared to start flapping again. It was still difficult to make out details because so much of it was in the shadow behind the cow, but I could see basic shapes in the dark. One lump pulling the other lump off the road and into the desert. Then you can see the shadow lift up the cow and drop it 10 or 20 feet from the road. Chris told me to shine the headlights on this thing, and I thought that was a good idea since it sounded a lot safer than using a flashlight. And besides, I was already angling the car backwards, so I continued backing up and put the lights on this thing. The lights shone on the cow and the bat creature over in the dark, and Chris yelled out once again. Although this time, I yelled with him, and then my mouth dropped open in shock. This thing with humongous bat wings had squatted over the cow and was eating its guts. I mean, it was just pulling handfuls of the guts out and wolfing them down. But it was definitely not a bat. It looked like the damn devil himself. It had a man's face, but these wild horns. When the light hit it, the thing didn't even seem to react. It just sat there, eating bloody handfuls of cow guts. And then, it started ripping at its own skin, tearing at itself with a mouthful of violent teeth. Both of us started yelling again. I slammed the car in drive and we flew forward. I think it was no more than 10 minutes later when we made it to a service station in Quartzsite, Arizona. There was a guy working the counter where we went to get gas who treated us like we were raving idiots. We were yelling and ranting and he just sort of wrinkled his brow and then asked how much gas we needed. I rolled back outside and started filling up the tank. Chris hung back, just staring up at the sky like a child that had seen his first star. And then some old guy pulled up across from us and started gassing up. He asked, "You can still drive like that?" He was referring to the crushed roof, of course. I told him we just had some trouble. He chuckled and said, "I saw blood on a bumper before when I hit a deer, but I've never seen a smashed roof covered in blood like that. Looks like you underestimated the weight. How the hell did you get it on there?" At first, I didn't even understand what he was talking about. But then Chris walked up behind me, and the man said that it was good that we got it home, but too bad about the roof. Then it dawned on me. It was a deer he thought that we killed. He walked over to the car and started inspecting it. He told us that the problem was we shouldn't be strapping a deer to the top of the car. He said I needed a truck to haul it. Of course, he wasn't thinking that we'd been attacked by some gargoyle-looking demon creature in the middle of the desert. He was just thinking that we'd gone hunting and killed a deer and drove it home. Little did he know that we'd just seen a dragon or gargoyle or some kind of other monster eating a cow in the middle of the desert road. Once the guy pulled away, Chris turned to me with a funny look and asked me what the hell just happened. I told him that I was agreeing with the guy because I just wanted him to leave us alone. We ended up staying at a hotel in Quartzsite that night, and we drove back to San Diego in the morning. We were under the safety of the sunlight, and we felt a lot better there. We agreed we didn't want to be on the desert road anymore at night. I don't know what we would have done if that thing decided to attack the car after we found it. Maybe it was just too full of cow to be interested in us at the time. I was sure that what we saw was a dragon or a gargoyle, but Chris, on the other hand, was sure that it was Satan himself. He took it as a sign and totally changed his life. I don't know if it was the devil, but it sure as hell wasn't anything that people have common knowledge about. It really did look like some twisted gargoyle to me, but they can't exist, right? Maybe it was some kind of dragon. Who knows? Like I told Chris, a lot of weird shit happens out in the desert. And it's going to be a long time, if ever, before you catch me back out there in the middle of the night.